Emma Brooks had learned one lesson early in life. If you stayed invisible, people usually left you alone. That was why she kept her eyes lowered whenever she walked through Russo Manor. She wore simple uniforms, tied her dark hair into a loose bun, and never spoke unless someone asked her a direct question. At 28, Emma was the newest nanny employed by the powerful Russo family, a household whispered about in newspapers but never fully understood. Everyone knew Adrian Russo was one of the richest and most feared men in the city. No one dared ask how he had built his empire. The mansion itself looked less like a home and more like a palace. Marble floors reflected the crystal chandeliers above, expensive paintings decorated every wall, and security guards stood silently in nearly every hallway. The servants followed strict rules. Never disturb the boss. Never speak unless spoken to. Never question an order. Emma intended to follow every one of those rules. She had taken the job because she desperately needed money. Her mother's hospital bills had emptied her savings, and after her father's death 2 years earlier, she had become the only person supporting her family. Every paycheck mattered. The only bright spot in her days was 6-year-old Sophia Russo. Unlike the adults surrounding Adrian, Sophia didn't care about expensive suits or intimidating bodyguards. She simply wanted someone to read bedtime stories, braid her hair, and help her bake cookies. Within a week, the little girl refused to let anyone else put her to bed. "You smell like cinnamon," Sophia giggled one evening while hugging Emma. Emma laughed softly. "And you smell like chocolate. Because I ate 3 cookies. You promised only one." Sophia grinned mischievously. "I forgot." Emma couldn't help smiling. For the first time in years, she felt useful again. She didn't realize someone had been quietly watching from the hallway. Adrian Russo stood in the shadows outside Sophia's bedroom, unnoticed. He wasn't smiling. He rarely did. Dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, his tattooed hands rested inside his pockets as he observed the interaction. He had spent years watching dozens of nannies come and go. Most wanted the salary. Others secretly hoped to attract his attention. Emma was different. She never flirted, never lingered, never looked impressed by the mansion or luxury cars. She treated Sophia like family. That alone caught his attention. Without saying a word, Adrian turned and walked away. The next morning, the head housekeeper entered the servants' dining room. "Emma." She immediately stood. "Yes, ma'am. The boss wants you in his office." Every spoon in the room stopped moving. Several maids exchanged nervous looks. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Had she broken a rule? Was she being fired? No one was summoned to Adrian Russo's office unless something serious had happened. With shaking hands, she straightened her uniform before following the housekeeper upstairs. The massive office overlooked the entire city. Dark wood shelves lined every wall. A roaring fireplace crackled despite the pleasant weather outside. Adrian stood beside the window, hands behind his back. He didn't turn around immediately. Emma quietly waited. Finally, he spoke. "Sit." She hesitated. "I prefer standing, sir." That wasn't a request. She slowly sat in the leather chair. Adrian turned toward her. His piercing blue eyes examined her carefully. Not with desire. With curiosity. "You've worked here 9 days." "Yes, sir." "Sophia refuses every nanny." Emma nodded politely. "She likes you." "I like her too." Silence filled the room. Then Adrian asked something unexpected. "Why?" Emma blinked. "Sir, why do you care?" She looked confused. "Because she's lonely." His expression remained unreadable. "You answered too quickly." "Because it's true." Another long silence. Most employees tried to impress him. Emma simply answered honestly. Finally, Adrian nodded once. "You may go." She stood. "That's all?" "Yes." Emma hurried toward the door, relieved. Just before leaving, Adrian spoke again. "Emma." She turned. "Yes, thank you." She froze. For a moment she wondered if she'd heard correctly. No one had ever described Adrian Russo as a man who thanked people. She quietly smiled. "You're welcome, sir." After she left, Marco, the head of security, entered the office. "You scared the poor girl." Adrian remained looking toward the closed door. She's different. Marco raised an eyebrow. You've said that twice this week. Adrian ignored the comment. Instead, he asked, background check. Marco opened a folder. Everything's clean. Father passed away. Mother recovering from surgery. No debts except medical loans. No criminal record. No suspicious contacts. Adrian slowly closed the file. Keep watching. Marco frowned. You think she's hiding something?
No.
Then why investigate? Adrian looked towards Sophia's bedroom visible across the garden. I've learned that genuinely kind people are extremely rare. Meanwhile, downstairs, Emma tried convincing herself the meeting had meant nothing. Yet whispers spread quickly throughout the mansion. The boss called her personally. What did he want? Did she make a mistake? Maybe she's getting fired. Emma ignored them. She focused on helping Sophia prepare for school. Life returned to normal. Or so she believed. 3 weeks later, invitations arrived for the annual Russo Foundation Charity Gala. The event attracted politicians, celebrities, billionaires, and international business leaders. Every employee would assist during the evening. Emma assumed she'd spend the night serving drinks or supervising children upstairs. She couldn't have been more wrong. On the afternoon before the gala, Sophia burst into the nursery carrying a beautiful cream-colored designer dress. Emma, what happened? Daddy said you have to come with me tomorrow. Emma laughed. I'll already be working. Sophia shook her head excitedly.
No.
You're sitting with us. Emma's smile disappeared. What? Sophia nodded confidently. Daddy said your family. Emma stared in disbelief. Family? There had to be some misunderstanding. Before she could ask another question, Marco appeared at the doorway. His expression was serious. The boss would like to see you again. Emma felt her stomach tighten. She had no idea that by the end of the following evening, every billionaire in the city would witness Adrian Russo pulling her onto his lap in front of the entire ballroom, and nothing in her life would ever be the same again. Emma followed Marco through the endless marble hallway with her heart pounding against her chest. The closer they came to Adrian Russo's private office, the more nervous she became. She still couldn't understand why the boss wanted her present at the gala, not as a servant, but as a guest beside his family. Marco opened the heavy wooden door. The boss is waiting. Emma stepped inside. Adrian stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the glowing city skyline. He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, his tattooed hands resting inside his pockets. Without turning around, he spoke. Tomorrow night you'll attend the gala with Sophia. Emma immediately shook her head. Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. There hasn't. I'm only the nanny. You are the person Sophia trusts most. But the guests? I don't care about the guests. Emma lowered her eyes. They'll laugh at me. Adrian slowly turned to face her. They won't. She wanted to believe him. But she had spent her entire life hearing people whisper behind her back. She knew exactly how wealthy people looked at women like her. Adrian walked toward his desk and picked up a black folder. Inside were several photographs. The first showed Sophia laughing while Emma pushed her on a swing. The second showed Emma reading bedtime stories. The third showed Emma carrying the little girl after she'd fallen asleep. I review security footage every evening, Adrian said calmly. Emma looked embarrassed. You watched all this? I watch everything concerning my daughter. He placed another photograph on the desk. This one showed Emma covering Sophia with her own jacket during a rainy afternoon while she herself stood in the cold. You never knew anyone was watching. Emma remained silent. You were trying to impress anyone?
No.
You simply cared. She nodded. I did what anyone would do. Adrian looked directly into her eyes.
No.
Sir, not everyone would. For the first time, Emma noticed something behind his cold expression. Loneliness. She suddenly realized how isolated this powerful man truly was. People obeyed him. They feared him. But very few genuinely cared about him or Sophia. Before she could say anything, Adrian handed her another envelope. Inside was an invitation bearing her full name, Miss Emma Brooks, special guest. She stared at it in disbelief. I can't accept this. You already have. I never agreed. I invited you. Sir. His voice became softer. Sophia asked for you. Emma sighed. She could never disappoint that little girl. Okay. Adrian nodded once. Good. The following evening, Russo Manor transformed into one of the most luxurious charity events in the country. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the massive ballroom. An orchestra played softly. Politicians, celebrities, billionaires, diplomats, and famous models filled the hall. Everyone hoped to speak with Adrian Russo. Emma almost turned around the moment she stepped inside. She wore a beautiful navy blue evening gown chosen by Sophia herself. It wasn't revealing. It wasn't flashy. But she still felt completely out of place among glamorous women wearing designer dresses worth more than her yearly salary. Several guests immediately noticed her. Who's that? I've never seen her before. She isn't one of the socialites. She looks nervous. Then someone recognized her. Wait, isn't she the nanny? The whispers spread across the ballroom. Emma pretended not to hear them. Sophia happily held her hand. You look beautiful. Emma smiled. So do you. Across the room, Adrian entered. The conversation stopped almost instantly. Every head turned toward him. As always, he carried himself with calm confidence. Power followed him naturally. Business leaders hurried forward to greet him. But Adrian barely acknowledged them. Instead, his eyes searched the ballroom until they found Emma. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Then Adrian walked directly toward her. The crowd noticed. Every single person watched. Emma suddenly became even more nervous. Good evening, sir. You look uncomfortable. She forced a smile. I'm trying not to embarrass Sophia. You aren't. He offered his arm. Dance with my daughter. Sophia squealed excitedly. Daddy. Adrian smiled, a genuine smile almost no one had ever seen. Father and daughter danced first. Emma stood nearby watching. Several women whispered among themselves. One elegant blonde approached Emma with a fake smile. You must be the help. Emma nodded politely. I'm Sophia's nanny. The woman's smile widened. I thought so. She looked Emma up and down. I was wondering why someone dressed like that was standing among the guests. Emma remained calm. I was invited. The woman laughed. I'm sure you misunderstood. Another socialite joined in. Perhaps the kitchen entrance is around back. Both women laughed. Emma quietly stepped away. She didn't want trouble. She found an empty chair near the edge of the ballroom and sat down alone. Across the room, Adrian saw everything. Marco quietly leaned closer. Should I remove them? Adrian calmly shook his head. Not yet. Minutes later, the charity auction began. Guests filled the ballroom. Emma remained seated in the last row, hoping no one would notice her. Then the master of ceremonies invited Adrian to the stage. Thunderous applause echoed. Adrian delivered a short speech about helping orphan children before donating millions to the foundation. Everyone admired him, but throughout the speech, his eyes kept returning to Emma. She looked lonely, uncomfortable, completely out of place. After the auction ended, guests surrounded Adrian again. Business partners, politicians, fashion models. Everyone wanted a moment of his attention. Yet Adrian excused himself. Ignoring everyone, he walked straight toward Emma. She immediately stood. I should probably leave. Why? I don't belong here. Adrian stared at her for several seconds. Then he noticed several guests still watching, including the women who had mocked her earlier. An idea formed instantly. Without saying another word, he sat down in the large leather chair near the ballroom fireplace. Emma looked confused. Sir? He calmly looked up at her. Come here. She stepped closer. What is it? Before she could react, Adrian gently wrapped one arm around her waist and effortlessly pulled her onto his lap. Emma gasped. The ballroom fell into absolute silence. Hundreds of guests froze where they stood. Champagne glasses stopped halfway to lips. The orchestra completely stopped playing. Emma's eyes widened in pure shock. Sir, what are you doing? Adrian ignored every stare in the room. His voice remained calm. Stay exactly where you are. Then one jealous socialite broke the silence with a mocking laugh. So, this is the woman you've chosen? Another sneered loudly. A fat nanny? The smile vanished from Adrian Russo's face. Everyone suddenly realized they had made a terrible mistake. The ballroom became completely silent. Hundreds of guests stared at Adrian Russo with disbelief as Emma sat frozen on his lap. No one breathed. No one spoke. Emma's cheeks burned with embarrassment. Mr. Russo, she whispered softly. Everyone is watching. Adrian looked at her calmly. Let them. She tried to stand. I really should. His hand gently tightened around her waist. I said, stay. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The entire ballroom heard him. Then, a loud laugh echoed across the room. It was Vanessa Romano, one of the city's most famous socialites. She slowly walked forward with a champagne glass in her hand. So, the great Adrian Russo rejected actresses, rejected supermodels, and chose. She looked Emma up and down with open disgust. A fat nanny? Several guests laughed nervously. Others lowered their heads. Emma felt tears gathering in her eyes. She slowly looked down. This was exactly why she had never wanted to attend the gala. She knew people like Vanessa would never see her as anything more than someone to laugh at. Before Emma could move, Adrian slowly stood up, still holding Emma's hand. His piercing blue eyes locked onto Vanessa. The smile disappeared from his face. You owe her an apology. Vanessa laughed again. You're joking. I don't apologize to servants. The ballroom became even quieter. Adrian took one slow step forward. She is not a servant. Vanessa folded her arms. Then what is she? Adrian looked at Emma for one brief second, then turned back toward the crowd. She is the woman who has cared for the only family I have left. He pointed toward Sophia, who stood quietly beside William. When everyone else tried buying my niece's affection, Emma earned it. When everyone else wanted something from me, she wanted nothing. His voice grew colder. You judge her because of her appearance. I judge people by their character. He looked directly at Vanessa. That is why she'll always stand above you. Vanessa's face turned pale. Nobody had ever seen Adrian publicly humiliate someone from the city's elite. She opened her mouth to argue, but Adrian interrupted. Leave. What? You heard me. Leave my gala. You can't embarrass me like this. I already have. Marco stepped forward with 2 security guards. Miss Romano. This way. Vanessa looked around the ballroom hoping someone would defend her. Nobody moved. Nobody dared. She angrily threw her champagne onto the floor before storming out of the ballroom. The heavy doors closed behind her. Silence remained. Several moments later, the orchestra slowly began playing again. Guests quietly returned to their conversations. But nothing felt the same anymore. Everyone kept looking toward Adrian and Emma. Emma finally found the courage to speak. You shouldn't have done that. Adrian looked at her. Why? People will talk. They already do. They'll think. I don't care what they think. Emma lowered her eyes. You should. I'm not like the women you're usually seen with. Adrian smiled faintly. I noticed. She looked confused. They're elegant. They're famous. They belong in places like this. And you don't. Emma shook her head. I've never belonged anywhere. Adrian gently lifted her chin until she looked into his eyes. You belong wherever people value your heart. For me, that has always been enough. Emma couldn't stop the tears anymore. No one had ever defended her. No one had ever made her feel beautiful. Until now. Later that evening, Marco hurried toward Adrian with an urgent expression. Boss, we've got a problem. Adrian immediately became serious. What happened? We caught one of the catering staff trying to enter Sophia's room upstairs. Emma's heart stopped. Sophia? Marco nodded. He wasn't part of the catering company. He carried a fake ID. Adrian's expression became ice cold. Bring him. Minutes later, the man was forced into Adrian's private office.
He refused to speak.
Until Marco placed a photograph on the desk. It showed Vanessa Romano meeting him earlier that afternoon. The man's confidence disappeared. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Adrian leaned forward. What was the plan? The man sighed. Vanessa wanted the nanny blamed. She paid me to start a fire upstairs. Everyone would have believed the nanny caused another accident. Emma stared in disbelief. The kitchen fire. The man nodded. She arranged that too. And the broken vase. The missing jewelry. It was all supposed to make the nanny look careless. Emma covered her mouth. So none of it was my fault. Adrian quietly looked toward her. I told you. You were never the problem. The following morning, Vanessa Romano was arrested for conspiracy, property damage, and attempted kidnapping. News channels covered the story for days. The headlines shocked the entire country. Socialite arrested after targeting Mafia boss's nanny. Inside Russo Manor, life slowly returned to normal. Sophia once again filled the mansion with laughter. The servants smiled freely. Even William admitted the atmosphere felt lighter than it had in years. One sunny afternoon, Emma sat in the garden reading a storybook to Sophia. Adrian quietly approached. The little girl smiled. Uncle Adrian, I have an idea. Oh. She grinned mischievously. If Emma becomes your wife, she can stay forever. Emma nearly dropped the book. Sophia. The little girl laughed. What? I'm only helping. Adrian looked at Emma, then smiled. I think she might be. Emma laughed through her embarrassment. You two planned this. Sophia proudly nodded. Yes. Adrian gently reached for Emma's hand. I've spent years surrounded by people who admired my money. They feared my name. They respected my power. But you cared for the people I love. You expected nothing. And somehow, you taught me something I had forgotten. Emma whispered. What? How to trust again. She smiled. And you taught me that not everyone judges what's on the outside. The warm afternoon breeze moved gently through the gardens. Sophia happily hugged both of them. For the first time in many years, Russo Manor didn't feel like the home of a feared mafia boss. It felt like a family. And the woman who had once believed she would always be invisible became the only person the cold mafia boss wanted beside him. Not because she was perfect. Not because she was beautiful by society's standards. But because she possessed the one thing money could never buy. A heart that loved without asking for anything in return. Not because she was perfect. Not because she was beautiful by society's standards. But because she possessed the one thing money could never buy. A heart that loved without asking for anything in return.